Information innovation becoming a frontier agency. Chief information officers across government tell me one of the most important components of the advancement of AI at agencies is cloud computing. Those CIOs say one benefit for agencies is the ability to take AI applications anywhere their users can reach the cloud. Dave Hinchman's director for IT and Cybersecurity at the Government Accountability Office. Wole Moses is Chief AI Officer of U.S. Federal Civilian at Microsoft. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great to have both of you here. Dave, I want to start with you. What are you seeing agencies doing infrastructure-wise that set them up for success, or in some cases maybe hasn't, for introducing these AI applications?
Well, I think what's fascinating from GAO space is that the federal government is in its baby steps with the AI journey. Yes, there are a lot of tools out there. There are a lot of applications. It's not wholesale AI yet, but that's what agencies are looking at and trying to figure out how they're going to integrate this transformational technology across their organization. And I think that one thing that we've learned in our decades of auditing major system implementation is that we would encourage every agency considering this journey to make sure that you're doing the planning, maybe even before you engage with the vendor for the very first time, to make sure that you're pursuing something and you know what you're going to get, as well as building in the flexibility and the adaptability to grow that network down the road, because we all know that AI is going to change and evolve. Probably as we're having this conversation, something new is going to happen. So you want to be sure that what you spend a lot of money on is going to suit your needs further downstream as well.
Wole, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. What are you seeing organizations that are successful at using artificial intelligence applications doing 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead of time, infrastructure-wise, to get themselves set up for success?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. So with AI capabilities today and thinking about the architecture, so Microsoft as well as other cloud providers are providing AI models, AI GPUs for training and inferencing, tooling and infrastructure for building AI applications, all is managed services. And so to a large extent, that simplifies the architectural decisions that agencies need to make ahead of time. Now, at the same time, though, there are some core decisions they need to make around model selection and model benchmarking, AI observability and governance for the applications they plan to build. And so those are things they need to think about. But then there's another big thing that is important, which is around how they want to integrate with their existing systems. And so at the end of the day, a lot of what we're seeing in terms of AI applications involves integration with a case management system or a records management system, some existing system in place. And so how is that integration going to happen? Are we going to use APIs? Are we going to use something like model context protocols? So those are some of the early decisions around architecture that agencies need to make.
A couple of thoughts on what you said there, Wole. First of all, integrating AI systems into some of these systems these agencies have, as Dave can testify and has testified actually, are really old and were never, nothing like what agencies want to do now was even conceived of. What's that integration look like? And how does one plan now for, as Dave also said, AI is changing so quickly that what one thinks one might need to do today might be completely different 6 months, a year from now? Yeah,
another great question. So what's happening is that we are building abstraction layers to enable the connectivity into those systems. And so an example of an extraction layer may be something like a REST API into that system. Model context protocol is an AI native way to connect into your existing systems. And then also, you also have other technologies in place that can connect even into systems that don't support APIs. And so those are existing abstraction layers that can be taken advantage of to plug into those applications, which are important to your point, because a lot of what we see in government today is legacy that needs to be modernized. And so there's a path to doing that as well.
Dave, I said something earlier in the program that I want to use your experience and expertise to check myself on. I said in the years that I've been following this stuff in government, AI is probably the technology that has been the most comprehensively adapted using use cases instead of just using the technology for the technology's sake. Is that a fair read on my part? Is that what your research has borne out as well?
I think it is. AI is going to transform how government operates. It's going to change how citizen services are delivered. It's going to change how things are managed on the back end. And so, yes, I think you just need to look at the GitHub repository of AI use cases to see the growth in that over the years. It's growing on degrees of magnification every year. And I think that's a really key indicator of the hold that it's taking in government. And I think it's an exciting time because we're going to see how this really AI to scale, as we mentioned at the top of our discussion, how that starts becoming integrated into agency operations and the benefits that government's going to get from that.
What are the roadblocks that you've seen agencies run into as they've tried to make these changes and build their infrastructures in a way that supports what they do?
Historically, what we've seen in the government is that cultural change is a huge part of that, and you have to manage that. You need an executive sponsor who can be a loud, vocal cheerleader for the technology, who can really drive home the value proposition to federal employees, because as federal employees, we don't like change a lot often. And AI is going to change how your agency operates. It's going to change your business processes. And as an employee, you need to understand why that is and why is this a good thing that this is happening to me. So I think the cultural evolution and embracing this transformational technology is hugely important.
Wole, what have you seen organizations do to demonstrate the benefit to the employee in that cultural aspect that Dave talked about, not just in the technology aspect?
It's a great question. I want to come back to something that Dave said around some of those barriers in the cultural elements that have to be considered. So there's a lot of empathy, especially with a lot of concerns around generative AI that needs to be considered. But when I think about some of those challenges, I think about it in terms of the way we've traditionally thought about technology in terms of people, process, and technology. We remember that sort of axiom. And so there are challenges and opportunities along each one of those pillars. And so when I think about some of the challenges related to people, one of the challenges that we see across agencies, and I'd say organizations as a whole, is there's an uneven understanding of AI capabilities. There's uneven trust, which is another big problem. And that there's extremes in some organizations fully trusted, in some organizations there's low trust, and that means that there's uneven actual adoption within the agencies. So the people element, those are some of the challenges. In terms of the process, some of the challenges we see there are around, I think in many cases there's a reflexive tendency to bolt AI onto existing processes. We talked about legacy processes and applications earlier, and so how do you think about adapting this new technology and using it to reimagine those processes? And then finally, the biggest challenge I think that we're seeing is that we talked about people, process, and technology. In this case, the technology is changing faster than the people and processes, and that's where we're seeing the tension. In terms of success, what we're seeing, where we're seeing agencies be successful is using not just a tops-down approach, but also a bottoms-up approach, where agencies, where we democratize access to the tools, but we also democratize access to ideas. And so we enable some of the practitioners who have the domain knowledge and the expertise to actually build, ideate, and be involved in pilots. And so that's one of the factors to success.
So that people process technology equation that you just outlined is interesting to me, because I'd say for the first 18 or 19 years that I did this, people would always say, especially technologists, just the technology's good.
Right.
We're cool with that. It's the people and process that are more challenging. When the technology's changing as quickly now as it does, it strikes me that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And so we look at just over the past 3 years, the pace of change in AI, generative AI, the innovation that's happening is difficult to keep up with. And so that is as one of the fundamental challenges. And I think there's an opportunity, we know there's an opportunity for agencies to learn from each other. We see that's another place where we see success, where agencies who have, in many cases, similar use cases, they may be different along the margins, but there are a lot of commonalities. And so where agencies can share best practices and use cases, that's another thing that we see is as far as accelerating success.
How do you as an auditor measure things like culture, measure things like comfort level and trust and things like that that might seem to be more abstract. Is there a way to do it, or is that really an art rather than a science?
It's an art rather than a science, but there are things you can look at. For instance, is your workforce trained, that I think are indicative and get at those issues and help to figure out whether people are really embracing this. And workforce across the federal government is a hard thing right now, especially with trained technology workforce. I do GAO's work in cyber and IT and starting to do AI workforce. And I think that we see ensuring that you have a trained workforce who have the skills, who can help evangelize this technology across the organization can really help an agency as it moves down the path of its AI journey.
I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, gentlemen, that the CIOs see benefits in people being able eventually to use AI wherever they can access the cloud. I'm thinking particularly about edge computing in the Pentagon. I'm thinking about applications for law enforcement operators, inspectors who are out in the field doing any of that. What have you looked at so far in those areas, Dave, and what are the potential risks and the potential benefits and success stories that you've seen in that type of work?
So we haven't done a lot of pure AI audits yet, mostly because there hasn't been a whole lot for us to actually look at. And I think that congressional interest is just now skewing around to have us look at that. But I do think just from the purely cloud computing side that cybersecurity is a huge part of that. You know, with the increase in cloud usage by agencies, the threat vectors are increasing that much, the attack surface is increasing. And so we would encourage all agencies to make sure that your cloud providers are providing the security that they're supposed to, that are in your contract, and that you're, as an agency, are staying on top of your own internal responsibilities, because cloud doesn't mean you hand off everything to someone else. You still have things you have to do. And again, those might be different from what you're doing before. So making sure that you've got that change management in the organization so that your security folks really can take a look at ensuring that they're doing what they need to do to make sure that data is safe, while also making sure that your vendor is fulfilling their part of the bargain as well.
Wole, what do you see as far as organizations thinking about computing at the edge, whether it's no matter what kind of environment it's in? What will that change as far as risk management goes? What will that change as far as security goes, and so on over time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think David talked a lot about that. So, I mean, there's computing at the edge presents lots of opportunity. We're bringing decision support and analysis closer to where the problems lie. But yeah, I mean, the problems that we have to think about, or the risk we need to think about, is really around cybersecurity, management of those systems. And so those aren't necessarily new challenges, but those are some of the things that agencies are really doubling down on how they're thinking about it in the age of AI.
I know that you don't have crystal balls, gentlemen. We have a couple of minutes left, but I'm going to ask you to pretend that you do. I'll start with you, Wole. What should agencies be thinking about today that might not be on their radar screens for another year, 18 months, 2 years? Or is that not even realistic to try to think about, given how quickly this stuff is changing?
Yeah, great question. No crystal ball, but I mean, we could see some things happening already. So one of the things I think agencies, if they aren't thinking about, they should start to think about, is agentic AI use cases. And so right now we're in the age where we're primarily using AI capabilities as a human plus an AI assistant. Right around the corner are opportunities around human plus AI agent teams. And then beyond that, autonomous agent scenarios. And so I think agencies want to get fluent with that progression and the underlying technologies that will make that possible.
Dave, about 30 seconds.
Yeah. Plan, think about it, partner with the right vendor who's going to help you get to where you want to be, while also building out something that has that flexibility, so that the things we haven't even imagined are something that you can adapt to down the road. That might not be as smooth a process as we like. That happens in federal IT system deployment. But I do think that there's a lot agencies can do to best position themselves for that inevitable change downstream.
Dave, Wole, it's great to have both of you on the program. Thanks for joining me today.